From the twisted realm of science and the darkest pits of reason comes chilling tales of godlessness. Bear witness to the unfathomable terror that is the Good Atheist.
I actually want to talk about a little funny story that happened. Yesterday I was walking back from the metro, and I ran into these two guys that are obviously probably from Salt Lake City, because they have that accent, that American way of talking.
Like a Mormon Midwestern kind of sound to them?
Yeah, the whole thing, I don't know if you know this, but most Mormons, they have to go on a pilgrimage for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. When you see dudes walking around, they're not from here. They're not Quebecers. They are... they're from the U.S. They come and they go all over the place trying to proselytize. That's their big thing.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that's why Mormonism, there are more Mormons than there are Jews. They're a proselytizing religion. Mm-hmm. And, one where it's an active part. Like, if you want to say that you're a true Mormon, you spent a good year or two spreading the faith. You never watched Orgasmo?
I did watch Orgasmo. I just never imagined that the people that were sent up to Quebec in like our neighborhood, all the people, because our neighborhood is canvassed quite heavily by them, actually. It's, every other day when you're walking around, you'll see them. So I just never imagined that I just thought that was them, just wandering around being weirdos.
So you thought they were just native Verduners that had just found, the New Testament of Jesus and decided that they were going to go spread it?
My understanding of Mormons was that they dressed in creepy collared shirts with backpacks on, and they wandered around and if they had an opportunity to do something, that they would. I never imagined that it was to the degree of... you're saying these people get sent up from wherever.
Yeah.
They come up here and they live with like host families and go around and proselytize?
I don't know if it's host families. I know that some of them just actually get a dowry and they rent out, from the church, they rent out apartments and that kind of stuff in order for them to, for a specific amount of time, go out and just spread the word of God.
It doesn't sound like... I wouldn't mind scamming that. Basically be like, send me to Florida, I will proselytize the shit out of your religion, then I'll go there and spend it all on hookers and blow.
It might be a little bit too late. They might find out a couple things about you if they do a little bit of research. Have you typed your name in
actually,
in
you know what, my name is surprisingly clean. You type my name, you need to know my aliases. In order to find the bad pictures of me, you need the alias.
All right, fair enough. I guess maybe you could get away with it. But so basically, they stopped me. I was in a rush because my girlfriend was at home. I was late, so you'd already gotten to my house, but I wasn't there yet. And I'm sure all of you dudes out there know that you try to avoid these kinds of situations, because then your girlfriend comes in and be like, "What the fuck, dude?
Yep.
Where were you?" And I was on an errand. The metro was late. I couldn't help it, but they'll never listen. Anyway, so I asked them, say like, "All right, well, you got to walk and talk, buddy, because I'm in a rush. So if you want to proselytize, you got to follow me." Which makes an interesting dynamic, because whenever someone is following you to go somewhere, mm-hmm. It changes the the power dynamic of any. Between two human beings. It's like, follow me now. Okay, sure, I'll talk.
Well, why do you think so many people don't like being a third wheel? It's like if you have a couple that you're hanging out with and you're walking on the sidewalk, they get twosies. You get either in front or in back.
You get nunsies. Zerosies.
So what's the deal? Were you twosies with one of these guys, or was it like both of them kind of trailing behind you?
Well, they're both trailing, and there was one guy that basically was kind of the main dude, because how it works usually is that you'll have one, this is the same way they do with Jehovah's Witnesses too. There'll be one person doing most of the talking, the other person's just not saying shit. They're there to be trained. They're there to learn how to proselytize. Yeah. So they won't typically say much, but I always find those individuals, like if you really want to drive them crazy, talk as much as you can to the trainees, because they don't have any answers to some of your questions. They haven't reached that stage. So if you talk directly to them, they get nervous, man. And I always get the feeling or the impression that most of these dudes just don't want to be there. They have that look. I don't want to be here. The main guy always has that really, yeah, we're doing this. But the second guy, not so much.
Well, let me tell you what. Take a look at, going back to my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses, that I had a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses in my school that I went to in Ottawa. And the way it seemed to be, as far as I could tell, is that all of these kids' parents were hardcore Jehovah's Witness, and these kids hated being Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, it's
so you got to figure if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're the kid of a Jehovah's Witness, you basically have to go out and proselytize because it's part of your religion, and if you don't do it, my God, your parents will just fucking disown you.
Oh well, it's not uncommon for Mormonism and the Jehovah's Witnesses to really take a strong stance when you start, if you don't toe the line, they will cut you off completely. I forget what it's called. I think the Mormons have a name for it. I forget what it is when they just completely eliminate you. They will basically, no one is allowed to acknowledge your existence, and it's the same thing for Jehovah's Witnesses too. So you say, I'm not sure, and they're like, boom, you're out of the fucking circle. Nobody will talk to you, and you will be 100% ostracized. So you can understand that most of these individuals, they are towing the line, man. There's not a lot of enthusiasm coming into this because you are put on an emotional leash. They're holding a gun to your head, essentially saying, "Hey, do you want to leave this religion and leave all the people that you love behind, or do you want to, be godless?"
It's just pretty unfortunate that it's basically it's a choice that you have to make. You can't just be a kid of a Jehovah's Witness person and not be a Jehovah's Witness. If you do that, then basically you lose your family.
Yeah.
And to me, that has always seemed, as far as everything that I witnessed from my godless youth, that to me always seemed like the most fucked up thing. Like out of we had a couple of Hare Krishnas at our school too. They were more normal than the Johos.
Is that what the abbreviation is? Joho?
Joho.
I've never heard that. I wonder if they feel like that's derogatory. Is that how they feel? I don't know.
It doesn't really matter.
Who cares? What are they going to do, huh?
Are they being persecuted?
So much so. Well, within their own group. Anyways, so the story with these Mormon kids is that they're asking me, I was wondering if you could tell me about your religious belief. Now, obviously, I'm in a unique position as having thought about this issue very much and having, 2 radio shows a week on the subject. Yes, I'm like, well, got to tell you the truth, buddy. I have a very popular atheist podcast, and I'm trying to be a voice of atheism. So you're kind of meeting your other. So we're
proselytizing atheism.
Yeah, we are proselytizing atheism, but we don't offer we don't have any funds to send people out. We also don't ostracize you if you decide that to start believing in God. That's your choice.
But here's the deal: if any of you people want to become atheists or know somebody that should become an atheist, send them to us with some money. We'll sit them down and we'll convert them. That's our form of going out and getting it done.
I do seem to have a history of converting people. I guess if that's what you call it, converting. I usually just say I pop your bubble of delusion, but that's just my thing.
You just say, let me talk to you for a few minutes, which is what these people say too. There's very little difference except for the medium, man.
Yeah, well, I admitted to them saying, well, I do kind of the similar thing that you're doing. I'm talking about my beliefs, and I'm trying to be engaged in the conversation. I said, I welcome you guys being part of that conversation, and hopefully you come into it at least maintaining somewhat of an open mind. I know that that's not usually the case, to be quite fair, but I'm willing to accept the fact that not every proselytizer is hardcore and really upset if you don't follow what they think. Their whole mission is saying, well, I'm going to talk to people about, say, Jesus, and let them decide for themselves. And that's a fine attitude. That's great. That's where it needs to stay. But what I thought was really funny about these guys is after, I guess it had been maybe 5 minutes, they started having that look in their eye. And that look in their eye is, okay, we can't do anything with this dude. We got to abort. And it was probably also the fact that the kid was starting to have one of those looking down and raised eyebrow kind of thing, really starting to process what I was saying.
Well, what did you try and give them the 5 minute there is no God bomb? Did you like I'm gonna fucking in 5 minutes I'm just gonna be stab you in your faith's neck?
It was kind of like that. Basically,
and what did you say?
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned on the radio before, but
the how evolution basically disproves is that
I didn't go about doing that. What I basically told him is I said, well, if I was to be fair, and suddenly on the question of God, and one day decide I'm going to put it up for a review, a personal review, I'm going to say let's be generous and say there's a 50-50 chance of God existing or not existing. I'm not saying there is, but I said, well, for the sake of the argument, let us pretend for a moment that it is a 50-50 chance. And if I had to kind of look at my look at my judgment on this issue, I had to consider what is there to gain or to lose from either believing or not believing. And
Is
there's
this
really
Pascal's wager?
No, this is not Pascal's wager. This is my own interpretation of Pascal. Not even Pascal's wager. Just in terms of, like, if you're trying to make a decision, one of the things that you have to always admit is your own prejudice towards something. Now, if one of these beliefs basically says that you are going to live forever, which eliminates that fear of death. You are going to meet your loved ones, which eliminates the feeling of loss and pain.
Fear of loss.
And that basically he loves you, which eliminates the fear of loneliness. Then I cannot be fair about this question. I will be automatically loaded towards the side of believing. I have so much to gain from believing, and therefore that's what's so not trustworthy about that issue. I cannot trust myself to assume that I'm going to be objective. But at the very least, in terms of being an atheist, there is nothing for me to gain. Like I actually, you lose
out. We lose out.
You do lose out.
Actually, truth be told, I don't feel like I lose out because, quite frankly, I think I would probably end up in hell.
Well, this is where it gets a little bit more complex. Like, I'm just saying that I don't gain anything necessarily from not believing in God because there's no one there to reward me. But the things that I do gain is a profound appreciation for life as it is now. And not just for my life or the life of people that I care about, but all life. I see myself as just another African ape moving about and interacting with other African apes who happen to have very interesting minds that, believe in some great things and amazing things, and sometimes some really silly things. And like the hubris of thinking that you are really right about your specific religion as well. Like I can understand a person says, well, I think that there is a higher power, but I don't know what that is. That I can understand. But even then, the question of, say, Mormonism isn't a question of the existence of God. It's a description of that question. So not only does that 50-50 have to be, sort of like, well, I looked at the evidence and there is a God, but now this God apparently was, a descendant of the Jews, apparently reappeared in America in the 1800s, and he wants me to do all kinds of weird and crazy shit.
Like wear magic underwear.
What, like wear magic underwear? Or apparently that Jesus is living on one of the moons of Jupiter with a harem of ladies just waiting for him to come back.
Say what?
Yeah, no, I'm not joking. Like
Mormons.
Yeah, they believe that Jesus is on one of the moons of Jupiter. Like, that's not one of the things you hear a lot about, but I'm not joking. This is not a joke.
Wow.
And they have a specific name for it. I can't recall what it is, but just look it up, and you'll see. They believe that Jesus is on one of the moons of Jupiter.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you ever wanted to know why you get spam email, it's because if you hit enough people, somebody will respond to it. And I guess that's the whole thing with Mormonism. I'm amazed that it's so successful when it is so utterly ridiculous.
One of the things that I think is funny is that Mormonism doesn't really make you, doesn't force you to think. Atheism does force you to think. Because if there is no answer, then you're going to ask yourself, what the hell is the point of all this? If you think that there is a God, the point is, you don't worry about that. You're like, God has a plan for me, and it'll eventually, make itself known. Mm-hmm. And that's a very comforting thought, but you can obviously see just why that's such a flawed thought. But when you when you admit to yourself, no, there is no driver behind the wheel, you have to kind of think to yourself, well, what does that mean in terms of my life? How do I live my life in a world in which there is no arbiter of good or evil? And the one thing that you realize is saying, like, shit, I got to be part of that conversation. I have to change my environment. I have to work towards good because it seems to me at least inherently the right thing to do. And that's the kind of fascinating thing about this particular species of African ape. I think that we have a unique ability to really to have an innate morality. It doesn't always mean that the morality will be good or just, but there is that need. We have that need to organize, manage ourselves, to have to create codes of ethics and stuff like that. And that's not something that a lot of other apes can admit to. They have theirs are much simpler, but we can get along with strangers. That's an amazing thing that other organisms, they don't really share that ability.
Hell, I can meet a stranger at a bar and then have sex with them by the end of the night.
Well, no, actually, that is kind of like the animal kingdom.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
They don't have their bar is just nature, and their alcohol is mating calls.
No, their alcohol is just rape.
That's true. That's true. There's so much raping going on in nature.
That's the whole thing. I mean, you take this is just my whole thing about once you take away God, what's left? There's not too much. There is existence without meaning, because when you look at existence without God, what it is just all of existence on Earth just being a horrific cycle of nature's destruction, entropy,
nature's war.
Yeah, just I mean, thousands, like millions of fish. You got fish, all those tuna in the sea. They just get eaten by the thousands,
Constantly.
There was a fucking race of animals called passenger pigeons. They used to be the most. The largest numbered animal on Earth, other than fucking locusts, and we killed all of them. The last one died 150 years ago because we killed them all. We killed.
Why did we kill them?
Just because they were annoying and delicious.
Those are two very terrible qualities to have if you're any species. Because you know what? The truth is, sometimes when I watch nature documentaries, I think about how delicious some of those animals are. I'm like, eel. I love eel. So don't, if you want to have an evolutionary niche, be disgusting. Be not tasty. I think that's why cockroaches are so successful. They're not tasty. We don't like to eat cockroaches.
Well, there's the whole word and a whole thing. I mean, it's a completely different game over in India, and I personally wouldn't be against having that changed into some kind of processed healthy possibility or choice. I don't know.
The future is going to be very weird.
The future,
if all of a sudden they're like, no more cattle farms, we are only having cockroach farms, ordering a cockroach burger is going to be weird for me if that happens in my lifetime.
Okay, well here's something that I wanted to bring up.
Segue?
No, it's total sidestep into something else. Growing meat.
Okay.
This is basically something that PETA's been looking into and is advocating, basically saying we need to do more research into growing meat. Now, what do you think of the morality of basically growing meat?
Well, okay, I remember I saw an article a little while ago where they were trying to develop this fungus that was very similar in consistency and taste to meat, but it was fungus. Now, if they had, say, this substitute, I would be interested by it, because I'll be honest, I do love meat, but I'm a pragmatist. I believe that actually eating meat does a terrible disservice to our ability to live with some degree of homogeny with nature. Like one cow takes about as much water as like an Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's a lot for just a couple steaks. Like a highly efficient meat substitute, yeah, that's probably the future. Quite honestly, we just can't afford to maintain like the cow and chicken and pig populations that we have. And the other problem is that these types of animals,
it's not scalable. It's not scalable to higher populations.
Well, worse still is the fact that a lot of these animals transmit some of their diseases to us. Avian flu, for instance. We share a lot of still genetic similarities with some of these animals, so their flus or their illnesses can be transferred to us. It's just like apes have a type of HIV that people that scientists believe they transmit it over to us. Or for instance, the influenza in the middle of the First World War and the Second World War, there was like 17 million people that fucking died, and they actually think that was caused by pigs, by swine. So having animals, meat farms, like these things are pretty hazardous to our health. Like just look at listeriosis or E. coli or mad cow. Like there are risks associated with eating meat that would probably be smart if we eliminated these. And if tomorrow they said, okay, there are no more cattle, you got to go hunt your own food, I'm not going to have the guts to do it. I would become a vegetarian. I only eat meat because it is processed and done for me. Like I accept the fact that I am a coward and a hypocrite by eating meat. But it's so damn delicious. I'm trying to fight my evolutionary fucking needs here, and they are powerful indeed. Just try not to be so cruel with me. Give me an alternative that works and, like really works. Like none of this tofu dogs, because I'm sorry, they suck. But a real alternative, and I would go for it. I would jump on board as quickly as possible, because I just think growing or having meat, not from an ethical perspective but from an environmental perspective, is pretty disastrous. I'm like, you could solve the world's hunger if you stopped growing meat and grew food crops. Like no one would have to die of hunger anymore, but people die of hunger because I need meat. It's pretty fucked up, eh?
pretty messed.
That's just human nature. I mean, you don't think about the people. You don't think about the externalities of your own actions. I mean, do you think about what happens when you put your garbage out and it gets picked up? I mean, it goes somewhere, man. It doesn't disappear into a fucking black hole. There are externalities to your own life. You know, even the packaging that you throw out, or the 6-pack with the can thing that you threw out, that all of a sudden a bird chokes and dies later on when it's eating garbage. I mean, there was an externality. There was a cause and effect, thing that happened, and you weren't aware of it. So, I mean, let's not eat meat. Give me an alternative.
No, I actually really want meat right now.
I really do want meat.
You know what would be delicious?
No.
Passenger pigeon.
I hear that it tastes like chicken with sugar in it. It's quite delicious. Here's something that I wanted to actually talk about. Now, you refuse to watch this video. This will be the final thing that we talk about. If you haven't seen this video, go on the site, and there's an article about Kenyans killing 5 people who they suspected as witches. Now, I'm not suggesting you go watch the video if you're the faint of heart, because this is not, this is real, all right? These are 5 people being burned and kicked and beaten because, a mob of villagers thought that they were witches. So it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Now, first of all, you said you didn't want to watch it, right? You haven't seen it?
Yeah, no, I've seen enough videos like that. I've seen people in the Middle East get stoned. I've seen people with tires put on them and set on fire. And quite frankly, I understand what it looks like. Yeah. I don't need to see it again.
It's fair enough. I watched it so that I could be outraged enough in order to be able to talk about it. Just to kind of let it sink in. One of the things that really upset me when I did a little bit of research is the fact that the person who filmed it had notified the police 45 minutes before this happened, because a mob was immediately forming, and they were, the accusations were being thrown around, and you can always tell when a crowd is starting to get really aggressive and crazy. If you've ever been downtown during a sporting event and things got out of hand,
yep.
Like you had a feeling that everything's like, shit, something's going down. And when you feel that way, get the fuck out of here. That's my only...
Well, get the fuck out of there when you're in Africa or the Middle East or anywhere that's, in Canada, it's actually not that dangerous. But even, I guess, in the States or, hey, in the UK, that was where the G20 was, right? And that guy that was just walking by got shoved and had a heart attack. It's like, you got to watch out for shit like that, because even if you're not involved, you'll get sucked in and
you'll be involved in some way or another, But it wasn't consciously being involved, but you were there.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That feeling that you get where it's like, this crowd is getting unruly.
Uh-oh, they're starting to push cars. Any minute it'll flip over, and then things will go crazy. But
as soon as fire gets involved, I am out of there, and that is across
even before
the board.
Fire. As soon as somebody picks something up, or the first glass I hear smashed, I'm out of there.
As soon as something gets thrown or something is set on fire, it's like it's done.
Yeah, run the other way. So essentially, the police was notified, but they didn't do shit. And I have to, one of the things that I thought and I wanted to discuss, and I think that one of the big problems over in Kenya is the fact that I was reading some of the Kenyan blogs on the issue, and a lot of them were saying, well, these are older superstitions, this isn't something that we should be, obviously the religious community in the country is trying to fight this as well, because they see it as remnants of the old superstition.
And making them look like a bunch of fools.
Yeah, making them look pretty damn bad. But you know what? To be honest, I don't think that the religious guys are the right people to kind of walk into the situation, because they're saying, well, you need to abandon these superstitions and instead go for our superstitions. Like, you can't fight superstition with more superstition, because you're not actually eliminating the impulse towards superstition. You actually have to curb that. You have to make people understand what superstition is, rather than trying to get them to accept your dogma. I'm like, only by eliminating that dogma are you going to eliminate the hazards, because these are serious hazards. And I can even kind of relate or understand why they might be incensed to such violence. I mean, consider these guys are very poor, and most of them, if your crops fail, I mean, you're dead, man. It's like there is no safety net. You better get used to eating dirt. So if you literally believe that individuals can possess and use magic to destroy your crops, like, you are going to do whatever the hell you can to get rid of these people. Like, you're going to be afraid, you're going to be angry, you're going to be all the emotions that make people do really fucked up things. And I I really wish I could go over there, try to talk some sense into them. Honestly, I don't know what can be done. Like,
yeah, that's my main issue when dealing with these videos or these stories. I'm like, it's not going to change. You know, we can talk about, oh, more gay people got beheaded in the Middle East, or you know, more women were convicted and murdered for unjust reasons. And it's like, what is it going to do? These people, unfortunately, they have to sort their own shit out to a certain degree, and we can, you know, as an outside community, we can only do so much. And I don't think we're doing enough in the right ways. But there's very little to no effort going on inside these countries to change these issues. And so long as there isn't an internal mechanism to institute change, nothing's going to happen.
I think we have to accept part of our responsibility in this issue, just in the fact that even as a secular nation in Canada and you know in the U.S. as well, that we're really kind of creating we're supporting basically the bedrock of superstition. You know, even in a place where you're saying reason is important, ethics is important, you're still saying, you know, when you pray hard, you know, wine gets turned physically into blood. Like, these are not... How can you speak against a person's superstition when you yourself have your own? You are not a society of reason and logic. You are still a society that's based on its own types of superstition.
So you're blaming the religions for trying to basically do the switcheroo.
Well, I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that if we ourselves hold any superstitions, then it's very difficult for us to kind of speak against other superstitions, because a person would say, well, you believe in equally stupid and crazy things. Like you believe in that the Virgin Mary didn't have sex, but gave birth to a child. Like to most people that are not Christians, that sounds utterly ridiculous, because it is utterly ridiculous. But we don't question these things. So we don't have a policy of putting people to task for having beliefs that are wrong. And you want to go over to another country and start telling them that they have to do that, you're not going to be able to do so. So I'm saying that if you wonder what you can do, the only thing you can is make sure that you live in a society where we do not support superstitious belief. Like, this is kind of the reason why we do this show. We're trying to fight superstitious beliefs and attitudes, because they have real life consequences in there. And and as the video shows, these consequences are frightening indeed.
I'm just in it for the women.
You are? The hot girls, the hot atheist girls.
Oh, yeah.
That keep messaging us. I gotta say, girls, stop sending us nude pictures of you. No, I'm just kidding. Keep doing it. Or at least somebody do it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Somebody do this. All right, with that, we'll wrap it up, and we're gonna see. We'll see. You'll hear us probably Thursday or Friday, depending. Hopefully Friday, if we feel good, depending on how the other show goes. But in any case, we'll be back next week, also for the bonus show, and hopefully we'll have even more listeners and more patrons.